we are continuing with our course, that is BPSC 145. In this course, we are learning about democracy and development in Northeast India. So we are continuing with this our exploration of northeastern part of our country, and we are learning about all the things that exist there since a very long time. So now we are heading towards Unit 9, that is about ethnicity and politics of recognition. So we will be learning about ethnicities and how recognitions politics is being played in that part of our country. We will be learning about all these things in our this unit. So, in introduction, we can say that in Northeast India, there are several communities who have been complaining of unequal treatments. So, there are several complaints that came up from that northeastern part of our country where they are saying that they are not being treated equally at par with all the other population, Indian population, or the citizens of India that live in other parts of the country apart from Northeast. So there is a complaint about unequal treatment from that part of the country. And it is also meted out to them either by the central or state governments or by other communities. So they complain about that these unequal treatments has been done by the central, state governments or by other communities. So according to them, their opinions are neglected in the formulation of policies. So whenever the government is making policies, they complain, the northeastern people complain that their opinions are not being taken care of, are not being neglected, and that is their complaint that they couldn't take part in the governance where their needs, their issues could be highlighted. So the vested interest exploit their natural resources. So all these are complaints that northeastern India, northeastern part of our country used to do. And there is also a complaint that there is exploitation of their natural resources, and there is also limited economic opportunities for development in the northeastern region. So, according to them, they are neglected, they are exploited, they have limited economic opportunities, which ultimately lead to their erosion in their social and cultural identities. Also, it resulted in economic disadvantage and political exclusion. So, this is what the mind of, this is what the concern of the people living in that part of the region, which came to the forefront. And often there is a feeling that get manifested in political aspects and ethnic relations. So to continue with this, let us know what do we mean by ethnicity and politics of recognition. So we will be talking about the concept starting with what is ethnicity. We are again and again using this word ethnicity in our previous slide. So it is very important to know what does ethnicity stands for. So ethnicity is related to a kind of group identity. When you are living in a group and all the people in that group are having same identity, that means they belong to a same ethnicity. Same identity means a particular identity. Each and every individual have multiple identities. So the group identity is called ethnicity. Such identity is formed when a group of people think that they share common characteristics. So when we can call a group an ethnic group, when they will be sharing their common characteristics such as language, culture, customs, history, economic needs, race, kinship, etc. So if a particular group is having common language, common culture, common customs, common history, common economic needs, common race, kinship, etc., then only we can say that that group is an ethnic group. So these are called markers through which we can call them ethnic. But every group identity is not an ethnic identity. This is also very important. A group identity becomes an ethnic identity only when it compares itself with another group identity. So, this is group identity which we talked about. But when we call it ethnic identity, when we are going to compare from the other another group identities. Thus, different group identities and relationships are ethnic identities, and the relationship between different ethnic groups is known as ethnicity. So these relationships can be different of relationships, conflictual, competitive, cooperative. So there are different patterns of relationship that exist in ethnic groups. Their relations depend on political context as well. So, for example, elections, government formations, competition among and within the parties and among leaders. So, their relationship, the relationship between ethnicities or ethnic groups, also depends on the political context. And there are number of markers that form ethnic identities varies. So there are different markers through which we can identify differences in the ethnic groups. An ethnic can be formed on the basis of a single marker such as language, culture, custom, tradition, race, clan, religion, or any other. So, with reference to Northeast India, ethnic identity generally alludes to as the group formed on the basis of multiple factors. So, in Northeast India, there are multiple factors which make a group an ethnic group, such as tribe, race, kinship, culture. In culture, we can talk about food, dress, songs, etc. There is also region, custom, history, religion, economy, etc. So every northeastern state has multiple ethnic identities. This is very important that you should remember this, that in Northeast India we cannot find uniform ethnic identities. Each and every state has multiple ethnic identities among them. So there are two perspectives that explain the nature of ethnic identities, that is primordial and the instrumentalist or the constructionist approach. So there are two: primordial, one; instrumentalist or constructionist are same. So two. So primordial and instrumentalist, for example. The primordial perspective suggests that ethnic identities are naturally given. So they believe that it is natural when we are taking birth with those identities, and it is nature who brought us to that particular ethnic group. This perspective gives priority to the ethnic core or ascriptive factors as the principal causes to form an identity. So ethnic identities are not permanent and their shape is malleable. Both these perspectives have limitations. So first of all, we have seen that it is primordial perspective which talks that ethnic identities are naturally given, whereas on the other hand, the instrumentalist or the constructionist are saying that it is not natural and it is formed by the elite who tried to manipulate the imagined and constructed markers for an identity. The primordial perspective does not explain how the ascriptive or primordial factors get political manifestation, whereas the instrumentalist approach does not explain why the elite are able to manipulate the markers of identity formation. Alternatively, why do members of ethnic groups respond to the call of the leaders from their ethnic group? So some suggest that the combination of primordial and instrumentalist perspective can better explain the formation of ethnic identity. So we can see that both the perspectives are different from each other, but they also have limitations, which we are seeing in this slide. So no perspectives are complete because there is always a possibility of something new, something different from the existing perspective. Now, let's talk about what is politics of recognition. We learned about ethnicity. Now we'll be talking about politics of recognition. The politics of recognition is about relationships between two or more groups or individuals. So, when we are talking about politics of recognition, it will involve two or more groups or individuals. According to Charles Taylor, the notion of recognition, he explained it and he denotes that every individual is an embodiment of self-respect. Self-respect is very important. It is also based on the premises that a reciprocal and equal relationship exists between two or more groups or individuals. So, what does it mean? It means the group or the individual should have mutual and equal respect for each other. Self-respect, mutual respect for each other, equal respect is very important, and it is also very core to the politics of recognition. Lack of equality in mutual relationships shows a lack of recognition or presence of misrecognition on the part of one of the groups or individuals. So there is always an attempt to seek equal treatment in mutual relationships so that they can work properly. Now, Charles Taylor also conceived the politics of recognition within the framework of multiculturalism. Multiculturalism means when multiple cultures are existing together, that is known as multiculturalism. So, this framework is about mutual and equal relationships among different groups about their democratic rights. So, whenever you are in a multiculturalism, there is a need for mutual and equal, there is a the relationship should be based on mutual and equal partnerships, and there is a there are different groups that exist together, and equality is very much necessary to further enhance the multicultural aspect of the society. So a framework of multiculturalism focuses on respect, recognition, and autonomy of discrete identity groups. This framework was originally applied to the Western context. So there is a very famous scholar, Gurpreet Mahajan, who points out that the Western discourse on multiculturalism locates the source of discrimination within the nation state. It overlooks the sources of discrimination that exist outside the nation state, such as discrimination against the minority groups and with the government functionaries. In its application to India, a multicultural framework has been applied with reference to religious groups, according to Gurpreet Mahajan, and it is written in her book. Now, let's talk about what is the relationship between ethnicity and politics of recognition. In political recognition relating to ethnicity, there are different stakeholders and rival ethnic groups and state agencies. So the issues in this politics involve various factors which we are going to know now. The first is rights of the ethnic group about political representation. Secondly, the political autonomy, recognition of national symbols, protection and preservation of their cultural identity, which includes their language, their race, their customs, the status of the women in their tribe or in their ethnic groups, and also natural resources. So in politics of recognition, ethnic groups feel that the rival groups do not treat them fairly or equally. So this is a very important point where if there is a feeling of mistrust, there is a feeling that the other group is rival and they will not treat us fairly. The aggrieved ethnic groups attempt to recognize their rights, their culture, and their symbols, ethnic identity, protection and preservation for their social and cultural identity, and economic resources and opportunities. So, while doing this, they appeal to the state agencies or other ethnic communities. So, there is a feeling that the state or communities will not respond to their concerns in equal manner, and also they will not make their efforts to get recognition. So they either discover their cultural symbols and project them not inferior but to the symbols of other communities. So there is also resort to collective political mobilization. Now let's talk about that there are two dimensions, broad dimension of politics of recognition in Northeast India. So what are these dimensions? It is social, cultural, and political. The social and cultural dimension is related to protecting and retaining symbols of social and cultural identities. So each group is having their own cultural identity, own social identity, which is distinct from the other groups. So there is this dimension talks about preserving that, protecting their unique identity, and also the political dimension, which we talked about, includes a political autonomy, sovereignty, representation, creation of new states or union territories out of existing states or institutions. So there are such as autonomous district, regional and territorial councils, which ensure political autonomy and recognition of flag, constitutions, ethnic communities claiming to be nations. Let's talk about politics of recognition in Northeast India. The politics of recognition pertaining to ethnic groups in Northeast India has broadly three forms. So what are these three forms? The first is with the reference to relationship between the principal ethnic groups. So there are many ethnic groups that exist in a particular state, but there are majorly or primarily principal ethnic groups which has more population and which are more they are more popular, and they have more access. So there are also many ethnic groups who wants to stay remotely. So with reference to relationships between the principal ethnic groups in a state, such as between Bengalis and Assamese in Assam, or tribals and non-tribals in Meghalaya. So secondly, what is the second form? It is about relationship within an area between the communities, each claiming to be indigenous and considering the other as non-indigenous. So there is also a fight, or you can say a cold war, that always going on between ethnic groups. Some group they claim that they are indigenous population and the other one is not. Similarly, that party or that group talks about their indigenous identity and claim that the other one is not. So there is there is a issue here. And also it is the example of this second form is between the Nagas and Kukis. Third form is with reference to the relationship between ethnic groups and the state institutions. Okay, so this is the three forms which we talked about. The politics of recognition in Northeast India is also caused by the birth of the birth of consciousness within an ethnic community to seek social and cultural and political recognition. Now, let's talk about the politics of recognition in Northeast India and specifically the context. In which context we are talking about this politics of recognition? So, the context is the politics of recognition in Northeast India plays out in a specific political context. So, the latter is represented by the rise of the opinion makers, especially the middle class among the ethnic groups. Also, elections along with some significant political developments other than elections, like there is competition among politicians within the same party or different parties, there is bargaining for ministerial berths at the time of formation of government, etc. So there is a leading role of politics in recognition in Northeast India, which has been played by the middle class people, the students, or the civil society organization. So they are also very much involved in the context. The rise of the middle class among the communities in the Northeast can be traced to the colonial era. So we are learning that there is a very important role played by middle class people, and this emergence of middle class is not new. It traced back to the colonial times. Such as emerged across the communities are tribals and non-tribals. Non-tribals basically the Assamese and the Bengalis. Its emergence among the tribal communities is more spectacular, and even among the tribals, its growth had not been over the period. So, during the first half of the 20th century, there is a middle class which emerged among the tribes in other communities. So, in the pre-independence period, that means before India got independence, having got educated in Calcutta, Guwahati, and Shillong, these people from the middle class and also belonging to the indigenous ethnic communities, they played a decisive role in articulating grievances of their respective communities. So whatever the grievances these communities were having, these people who got education from Calcutta, Guwahati, and Shillong. And why these three places are important? Because these three places were the education hub, you can say, during the colonial period. Because Calcutta back then was the capital of the British East India Company, and later on the British colonialism. And that is why the education system was very anglicized there, and modern concepts were taught in schools and colleges. And these people getting education from these areas and these institutions, they came back and they put forward the grievances of their respective communities, because now they have education, they know what is going wrong, they know what is the needs of the communities that should be put forward so that they can be addressed on time. So this middle class also continued to grow in the post-independence period among different indigenous communities in the Northeast India. So these class are, it is not that they doesn't exist after India got independence. They also continued. This class also continued, and among the different indigenous communities, specifically in the Northeast India, it also has close relation with the ethnic communities. So this close association with their respective communities enabled them to reflect on issues or grievances of their respective communities. So, what are the grievances? It includes a wide range of issues that are social and cultural, related to social and cultural identities. There is also political autonomy and preservation of economic resources and opportunities. So, the elites from this indigenous ethnic communities in the Northeast, that is middle classes, students, politicians, or civil society organization, generally identified the reasons of their grievance. So they can identify the reasons for which they are not happy, and there are scope of improvement, and it is in the nature of their relationship with the nation state agencies or the central police or the governors, migrants and other regions, etc. So they underline that such relationships lack equality in reciprocity. They says that whatever equality they are showing, they are not getting it back, and they are not given due recognition. Their opinions are neglected. The government, especially the central government, often uses central government institutions to impose its decision on them. So according to them, their ideas, their views are not taken seriously, and it is the central government who is imposing their decision on them. So, such opinions can be based both on reality and imagined factors, and the efforts on the part of opinion makers to seek autonomy, equality in the relationship, self respect, etc., indicate that the existence of politics of recognition on the part of the communities in the region. Now, under this politics of recognition in Northeast India, let's talk about the social and the cultural dimension. Some of the important aspects of the social and cultural dimension of the politics of recognition in Northeast India are, so what are the sources? What are important aspects of social and cultural dimension? The first one is related to the language. There are an n number of languages that is spoken in the northeastern part. Each state has multiple languages. So you can imagine there are 8 northeastern states, and among them there are so many different languages, each belonging to particular community, particular tribal group. So there are many languages that is there. So the first is related to languages. The second is recognition of the discrete identity of a tribe. There are many tribes who live in this northeastern part of our country, and they wanted recognition from the government. Also, preserving and protecting the identity of the tribe from the erosion in its original features. So there is also a concern where the government tries to preserve the tribes because they are getting extinct, and also they are getting modern, and that is why the authenticity, the originality is going to vanish in few years. So they try to preserve their art, their language, their food habits, their clothes, which is very much unique to their particular tribal identity. So there is a concern for preserving those identity so that they can't erode in its original features. Also, language and patois have been a source of ethnic conflict in Northeast India. So the roots of it can be traced to, again, the colonial period. There is, in the book by Sajal Nag, Roots of Ethnic Conflict, he explains that during the colonial period, middle classes belong to ethnic groups such as Assamese and Bengalis. They competed for recognition for their respective language. So both wanted their language to be the official language of the area. Also, arguing in favor of the Bengali language, the Bengali intellectuals and middle classes argued that Bengali should be the official language and that Assamese was a patois of Bengali. So this is how the conflict was going on among the ethnicities, among the communities. They wanted their language to be accepted as official language and others should not. So this is how the conflicts were existing in that part of our country. Now let's talk about the reply or the counter argument that Assamese language spoken people have given to Bengalis. So the Assamese gave a counter argument that Assamese was developed and independent with a long history. Also, it should be recognized as an official language, they claim. Both sides appeal to the colonial authorities for recognition of their interest or the pressure of both sides appeal the recognition of their respective language as an official language, and also the colonial authorities took different stances depending on their interest or the pressure of respective ethnic communities. So it is also should be kept in mind that colonial authorities have their own particular interest as well, and that is why they take different stances time to time. And also, whenever there is a pressure by these ethnic communities, they also work according to that because of the population's pressure. In the year 1838, the colonial authorities recognized Bengali as an official language in Assam. So Bengali began to be taught in schools in Assam. So Bengali was accepted by the colonial authorities to be spoken or to be made official language in Assam. Also remember, Assam was back then very big. It later got divided into different states. So whenever we are talking about pre-independence time, so you can imagine that it includes majorly most of the northeastern states that exist today. Assam was very big back then. It was not divided. Now it is divided into different states. So it is something which you should keep in your mind. The initial introduction of Bengali as an official language, official work in Assam was done in Persian because there was a home regime that existed in Assam. In the year 1873, Bengali was replaced by Assamese as an official language. As we have learned that according to the interest of the colonial rulers, they shift their perspectives, they take decisions. Now they are saying, in the previous slide we said that they were okay with Bengali being the official language. Now they also changed. So it is based on their interest, the pressure from the community, which keeps changing the official language. Also, in the conflict over language questions during the colonial period, the colonial authorities supported the Bengali middle class. It is also very, very important to know. Missionaries, whereas, supported the Assamese middle class. So, in the post-independence period, during the 1960s, Assam witnessed language conflicts. So, because few were supporting Bengali, few were supporting Assamese, so there were also tribes who wanted their language to be official language because in Assam there is a very good number of population who belongs to the tribal groups. So there is a conflict which arose in the post-independence period because of the language. So the Assam Sahitya Sabha passed a resolution suggesting Assamese became an official language in the entire Assam. It also included the non-Assamese languages such as from the hill areas, it is Khasi, Garo and Jaintia hills, and in the plain areas it is Bengali dominated Barak Valley. So the move faced opposition in the areas inhabited mostly by the non-Assamese linguistic communities. So the language was also one of several issues in the Bodo's politics of recognition. So we have discussed about Bodos or Boros in our previous sessions. So also in this part we are learning that there is also language issues that arose with Bodos. So these issues were included in the 92 points charter of demands of the All India Bodo Students Movement that was prepared in the 1987 Assam Accord. So the Bodos objected to the clause 6 of the accord, which includes that Assamese as a concept for people of Assam whose interest the Assam Accord was expected to protect. So, in their opinion, according to the Bodos, the term Assamese subsumed the identity of smaller tribes such as Bodos. So, who comprises of Assamese people? So, there should be multiple, indicators that there is also Bodos, and not being an umbrella word for all the people living in Assam, because they have their own identity which is different from each other. Northeast, which feels that their indigenous identity has been eroded over the years, as ethnic identities in Northeast India are formed on the basis of multiple markers. So, what are these multiple markers? It is language, race, kinship, the specific characters of a tribe, such as, whereas it is in Khasi, we have learned that there is matriarchy, the status of women, natural resources, etc. Erosion in any of these markers is viewed as erosion in entire identity. So, these markers should be fulfilled, and if these markers are any of these markers eroded, their entire identity will be vanished. So the indigenous communities complain that erosion of their identity is reflected in every marker of their identity, which impacts their overall ethnic identity. So the reason for their perceptions are both real and constructed. They counted several factors accountable for their erosion in their identity. Why? What are these factors which, according to them, are eroding their identity? The first one is unequal treatment by the state, especially the central governments, the institutions, agencies associated with it, and also the role of immigrants or non-indigenous ethnic communities, which came, as we have learned in our previous session about migration issue in Northeast India, how illegal migrants came and settled in the area. They are also founding it a concern. The people, it is eroding their identity, because they are taking all the resources from them. Now let's talk about the political dimension. So if we talk about the political dimension, the elite middle classes from ethnic communities in the Northeast channelized the feeling of neglect or recognition of their respective communities into political demands. So what are these demands? So these demands span from seeking regional, district or territorial councils, also formation of new states, formation of states within old states, the introduction of inner line permit, and also the creation of sovereign states. So these are the demands which span from these various issues. In some cases, there is also political mobilization because of these demands gets manifested in insurgency or ethnic conflict. The context of the political dimension of politics of recognition in Northeast India is indicated by the rise of middle classes or elite. Major political developments in any state of region, elections, bargaining among political leaders at the time of government formation. So, in most of the northeastern Indian states, indigenous communities discover or invent symbols such as flags, constitutions, territorial autonomy institutions, etc. According to them, there have been nations since time immemorial. In the 1950s and 1960s, the Nagas and the Mizos were engaged in insurgencies. By the end of the colonial power became a political context for the Nagas to assert that they had always been an independent nation. So Nagas claim that they has always been an independent nation, and why they are being stuck in the territory of Indian subcontinent, in the Indian land, Indian country. They should be separated, they should be sovereign, and also they discovered symbols of their nation and claim to have a sovereign nation. So there is non-adherence to the Hydari Accord, which was signed in 1956, which led to the birth of the Naga insurgency. However, the formation of Nagaland state in 1963 resulted in the decline of Naga insurgency until the signing of the Shillong Accord in the year 1975. So there was a demand of the creation of Nagaland, which is the latest phase of politics of recognition. They wanted a different state, which they will be naming it as Nagaland. Also, the Mizo insurgency began in the wake of the famine in 1956 in Mizoram, and Mizos felt that they are being neglected by both the central government and state government in Assam, of which the Lushai Hill was then a part. So, back then, when they were raising their voices, the Mizoram was not a different state, it was inside Assam territory. So with this, we ended with our Unit 9 that talks about ethnicity and politics of recognition in Northeast India. We are heading towards Unit 10 that talks about the political parties and party systems. So in this part, we will be learning about how politics is being, designed in that Northeastern part, how many parties are there, how party system is working. So this unit, even the previous unit and this unit, both are very important because it talks about the core identities. It talks about how things are being done in the northeastern part. So let's move on. In Northeast India, political parties are among the most effective agencies that articulate the people's concern. So what is political parties? Which put forth or bring the issues, the opinions of the people to the forefront. And in Northeast India, these political parties are the most effective agencies through which people's concern came forward. They are linked between the people and the government. This is very important point. You should note it down that political parties are a link between the people and the government. They represent people in the legislative assemblies and the parliament, and they also address their concern outside the legislative bodies. And it is not that political parties are only doing and representing people in the legislative body, but they also see, or they also address the concern outside the legislative bodies in the public space. So according to Election Commission of India in the year 2021, across Northeast India, there are 20 regional parties. This is very, this is point to be highlighted that in Northeast India, there are 20 regional parties, and the Election Commission of India categorizes these parties as state parties. So Arunachal Pradesh has 3 such parties. Because there are 20 regional parties that Election Commission of India is talking about. So Arunachal has 3 such parties. Assam is home to 4 regional parties. Both Meghalaya and Mizoram have 3 regional parties each. There are 2 regional parties each in Manipur, Nagaland, and Sikkim. Tripura has only 1 state party. There are 8 national parties all across Northeast India. So this is very important, where we are seeing that how there is existence of political parties there which are regional in nature, and they are known as state parties by the Election Commission of India. Now let's talk about parties and party system. What is their meaning? So political parties are devices through which people represent themselves in the legislative bodies and the government. So what do we mean by political parties? It is a device through which people represent themselves in the government or in the legislative bodies. Also, they articulate the people's interest and strive to address them outside the governmental institutions. In a democracy, their main purpose, whose main purpose? The political party's main purpose is to capture the state for making policies for the people. Also, these parties that run the government are the ruling parties, and those outside the government. This is a distinction between political parties. Who is in power is known as ruling party, and who is outside the government are opposition parties. So in India, political parties can be categorized based on their programs, their area or region of existence, ideologies, and formal registration with the Election Commission of India. So the ECI, that is Election Commission of India, categorizes the political parties in India as national parties, regional or state parties, registered, unrecognized parties. These are the criteria or the categories through which parties has been identified by the Election Commission of India. Let's talk about the evolution of party system in Northeast India. Political parties and party system in Northeast India develop broadly through 3 phases. So what are these 3 phases? The first phase is pre-independence phase. Secondly, the phase between the late 1940s till mid 1970s. and the third phase starts between 1970s to 2021. In the first phase, political parties in Northeast India existed in Assam, which consisted of those areas which were annexed by the British over a period and became separate states in the post-independence period. That we were talking in our previous slides, that how Assam was comprising of all the states, and it was because of the annexation by the Britishers that these areas became separate states in the post-independence period. Congress was the first party to emerge in Assam, but there was no branch of Congress or it's formally affiliated in Brahmaputra Valley until 1920. Prior to that, there had existed political association in different cities of Assam. These associations were, they sent representation to sessions of the Congress parties. District Congress was set up in Shillong in 1938. In this city, Hill Union also was set up by MacDonald Kharkhongor, who had left the Congress. And after that, Congress started setting up its unit in the partially excluded areas so that they can have more reach to the population. In the year 1930s, also saw the emergence of Congress in the princely states of Manipur and Tripura. So back then, Manipur and Tripura were princely states, and as an opponent of the Congress, MacDonald Kharkhongor attempted to develop Hill opinion in different hills of Assam, Tripura, and Manipur. So let's talk about what are the characteristics of party system in Northeast India. So we can identify some common characteristics of political parties and party systems in the states of the Northeast India. These characteristics are related to the issues which are part of their programs. So what are these issues? A relationship between the regional and national parties issue, the dominance of one party system in the one party in the party system that existed in northeastern region of India. Thirdly, the adaptation of the strategy of the national parties to the context and specific state. However, there may be some state-specific characteristics that you will be noticing in the next subsection that we are going to cover. And this section will be dealing with the party and party system in Northeast India. So, let's talk about the programs of the party system. The state-level parties in Northeast India focuses on the regional and ethnic issues of their respective states. As they have multiple ethnicities living together, there are so many ethnic communities that live together, their issues are also related to them. So in this sense, they are ethno-regional parties. So they articulate issues relating to their ethnic and regional identity and also development, that is political autonomy was a reason, or you can say what at these state level is at political autonomy, greater access to resources, recognition of their distinct cultural and linguistic identity, ending the discriminatory policies of the center, cultural specificities, preservation of cultural identity, recognition of regional languages, medium in education and government services. Migration from other regions or neighboring countries is also a very big concern for these state level parties, because this migration is causing havoc in the life of the people of northeastern part of our country, because according to them, they are getting, because of illegal migrants, the space, their cultural identity, all are getting diluted. So that is also a concern by that is faced by these state level parties. Generally, the regional or state parties program consists of issues raised by the civil society movements in the region. Now let's talk about what is the relationship between the regional and the national parties here in Northeast. The regional parties focus on the region specific issues related to ethnicity and regional development. They are often critical of the policies of the central governments. Most regional parties argue that they are regional parties with a national outlook. Relationship between the regional parties and the national party that heads the central government are conflict and cooperation. Some regional parties either ally or merge with the parties that lead the central government. So this happened due to the split in the regional parties, defection or fall of government that is headed by the regional parties in the state. In the year 1970 in Meghalaya, the APHLC was split with one section joining the Congress. Also, since 1916, several regional parties joined NEDA, or leaders of regional parties joined BJP, the ruling party at the center. Let's talk about the dominance of a party, national or regional. Which party is in the dominant position in northeastern part? Until 2014, generally, the Congress party or an alliance led by it was a formidable political force in the region. Since then, it has been replaced by the BJP-led alliance, NEDA, in the region. So, the state level political parties of the Congress or the BJP played a very important role in Northeast India. And in some states, these are the state level or ethnicity based regional parties which play a very decisive role in the politics of the state. In Sikkim, the state level ruling party has remained the dominant party in the state. So there is difference. Somewhere it is the national party, somewhere it is the regional party. National parties in the local context. So the national parties, especially the Congress and the BJP, have all India level programs. However, they adjust their political strategy according to the cultural and local context in Northeast India, because Northeast is a bit different, because there is so much ethnic communities, there are so many tribal groups, the region is very different geographically also, so they have to adjust their political strategy according to the location. So even as some regional parties or social organizations accuse that national parties and central government led by them of discriminating against the region, they feel that the national parties are discriminating because they are not, taking care of the multiple identities which are living there, and they are not be able to put forth their opinions. The national parties attempts to show concern for the cultural sensibilities of the region. The 6-year anti-foreigner movement that started from 1979 and ended in 1985 in Assam, and the Naga Mizo insurgency were a very good example of resentment against the Congress and the governments led by it. The alliances of the national parties with the regional parties helped them to change their political strategy according to the local context. Now, let's talk about parties and party system in the states. Let's start with Assam. Congress remained the dominant party in Assam until the late 1970s. In 1978 Assembly election, its strength declined to 26 seats in the House with 126 members. So, till 1970s, after independence, it was Congress's dominance in entire country, and Assam was also part of it. So Assam's politics was also dominated by the Congress party, and the hold of Congress, declined in the 1978 Assembly elections, where it could only retain 26 seats out of 126 members. By this time, the hegemony of the Congress declined, and there were many parties which emerged. What are these parties? The Plain Tribal Council of Assam, Ujoni Assam Rajya Parishad, People's Democratic Party, Assam Jatiyawadi Dal, Purbanchaliya Lok Parishad, and these parties came into existence between the 1960s and 70s. So they emerged, these parties, and they emerged and came into limelight because now Congress during that time was in its decline. Apart from these non-Congress parties, there were left parties also, such as CPI, CPIM, SUC, which are already present in the state. But the non-Congress parties could not replace the Congress in the 1978 Assembly election. This is also very important point here. Following the signing of the Assam Accord on 15th of August 1985, the Assam Gan Parishad was formed on 14th of October 1985 as a state party in Assam. This Assam Gan Parishad is very important, and it was headed by P.K. Mahanta. The Assam Gan Parishad won 64 out of 126 assembly elections held in 1985. With the support of some independent MLAs, the AGP stands for Assam Gan Parishad, formed the government under the leadership of PK Mahanta. The AGP formed government twice, that is from 1985 to 1989 and 1996 to 2001, with Mahanta as the chief minister, both the time. However, while AGP governments suffered challenges of governance, the party suffered from dissensions and splits. So there were many splits, many defections and dissensions that happened in the party, which ultimately took a toll of it. And soon after the signing of the Assam Accord, the Bodos expressed disagreement on the Assam Accord and started the Bodoland movement. So it also faced a challenge from the United Liberation Front of Assam, ULFA, which wanted the right to self-determination for the Assamia nationality. So from 2014 Lok Sabha election, the BJP emerged as a formidable party in Assam. With the joining of the BJP by former Congress Minister Himanta Vishwa Sharma in 2015 and of the former ASU leader Sarvananda Sonowal, the BJP go-to leaders with a solid support base and experience, because they were getting support from the ASU also because their leader joined BJP. So since 2015, the BJP has emerged as a dominant party in the state. Hemanta Vishwa Sharma, Chief Minister of Assam since May 2021, heads the NEDA. NEDA means the Northeast Democratic Alliance in the Northeast India, of which the BJP is a constituent. So the objective of the NEDA was to strengthen the BJP's base in the region with the agenda of the overall development of the region. Now let's move on to Meghalaya. Coalition and political instability have been essential characteristics of politics in Meghalaya. The state has had an average of less than 2 years of government tenure, and one government lasted for 10 days. So the examples are such that the experiences are very bad in Meghalaya. In the first 3 decades of its existence, the state had more than 20 governments. It has more than 10 regional parties, according to Sathapathy. Until 2000 for most of the time. In 2018, a coalition of more than 5 parties formed government in Meghalaya with Konrad Sangma as the chief minister. Let's talk about Sikkim. The party system in the state is marked by one party dominance. This is very important. Sikkim has one party dominance. However, it is the ruling party that dominates the party system in the state. So, the ruling parties in Sikkim are generally personality based. This is very important, that the very important feature of political and party system in Sikkim, that it is the ruling parties of Sikkim are generally personality based parties. The personality of the leader is what keeps the party in the power. The regional parties in Sikkim, like in other Northeast, are ethnic parties. The ethnic profile of the state influences party politics in Sikkim. There are 3 ethnic communities in Sikkim you can find, that is Nepalis, Bhutias and Lepchas. And they play a more decisive role than other communities in the state. So there are different communities in Sikkim also, but most influential are Nepalis, Bhutias and Lepchas. Let's talk about patterns in other states. So in Arunachal Pradesh, there exist ethno-regional and national political parties. So in Arunachal Pradesh, let's talk that in Arunachal, there is ethno-regional and national political parties. There is a porous relationship between the national and state parties in the state. So the parties, especially the regional parties in Arunachal, are embedded in the local culture and traditions. The differences among the tribes, religious groups, and ethnicity get reflected in the nature of political parties. The first assembly elections were held in Nagaland. Now we learnt about Arunachal, Sikkim, Meghalaya, and Assam. Now we are talking about Nagas, or the Nagaland. The first assembly elections in Nagaland were held in the December 1964. The party system in Nagaland initially consisted of two parties, that is, the Naga National Organization and the Naga People's Convention, NNO and NPC. The new government is known as Nagaland United Government with Nephew Rio as the chief minister. The National Democratic Progressive Party, the Bharatiya Janata Party, the NPF, resolved the form an opposition-less government to facilitate the Naga political issue. Now let's talk about Tripura. In Tripura, until the formation of the BJP in 2018, the major political formations or the dominant parties included the Left Front and the Congress. So, Left has a very good presence. Left was having a very good presence in Tripura, Kerala, and West Bengal since independence. So, before BJP came into the scenario, the major political formations that took place in Tripura were being done by the dominant parties. And what were the dominant parties there in Tripura? That was the Left Front and the Congress. Besides, the political parties of the indigenous people, such as the Indigenous Peoples Front and the All India Trinamool Congress, also have its presence in Tripura. If we talk about Mizoram, Mizo National Union emerged as a party with a strong social base, gaining 21 out of 36 seats in 1972 elections. So in Mizoram, you can find that the social base is very much strong by the Mizo National Union. And during the 1972 elections, out of 36 seats, it's got 21, which is a very huge number. So in the 1987 elections, which was held after the Mizo Accord, the Mizo National Front formed the government in the state. So the party system in Mizoram in most parts of the state's electoral history has been marked by the presence of the MNF, the Mizoram People's Front, and the Congress. So to sum up today's session, we have started with Unit 9 that talks about ethnicity. We learned that how ethnicities are diverse in the northeastern part of our country, and because of that there are many issues that arose. There is also conflict among the ethnicities. There is also concern among the tribals and the non-tribals, and also the original inhabitants and the immigrants. So we learnt about ethnicities in the northeastern part, and also the politics of recognition. What are the issues that arose in getting the political context? So we learned about the context. We learned about how political recognition is being played in northeastern part, and also we learned about what do we mean by ethnicity, so which has a common shared history, shared culture, share cultural practices such as food, clothing, songs. All these things became make a group, an ethnic group. So this is what we have learnt in our Unit 9. Later, we started with our Unit 10 that talks about parties and party system in Northeast India. Here we have seen that different states had different political patterns. And also there are total 20 state parties according to the Election Commission of India. These 20 state parties are regional in nature, which talks about the concerns regarding the issues particular to that region, whether what are the particular issues, how there are so many tribals, they have different issues with them, there are different concerns among them. And also these 20 regional parties or state parties are very much active during first starting of the post independence time. It was Congress which has a very dominant hold, but later on the regional parties they came in power, and they are more involved in the politics of Northeast India. So with this I end today's lecture. Thank you.